Hey Jefferson, third graders, fourth graders, and fifth graders. It's so nice to see you. Wow, it's a big week. I bet you've heard a lot in the news or on the radio or in your house about people's right to vote. That's right, tomorrow's election day. And we're going to be voting for the next president of the United States of America, right? So ask your family about it. I'm sure your teachers are talking about it with you too. When I think about voting, I always think about people who are brave, people who are being fair, and people who are making choices, right? Because when you vote, you are making a choice. And you can do that in your everyday life even now, even though you're not 18 and you can't legally vote yet in a presidential election. You can make choices in your life, and you can make choices in your play and how you decide things. That is really similar to a democracy or to voting. For example, if you're having a hard time deciding what game to play with a friend, maybe there's 4 of you and one of you wants to play Clue and the other wants to play Monopoly, right? And you have to decide, so you can take a vote. And 3 people vote Monopoly. Well, the rules of fairness or voting is that you have to go with the majority. So you might not always get the game you want to play, but you can take turns and you can understand that it's all about the most amount of people who want to do that activity is what wins, okay? That's when you might have some big feelings. You might have to take some belly breaths or some positive self-talk if you don't get your way and get through it. Another thing that I just mentioned was being brave. So not everyone who lives in the United States always had the right to vote. And so some people had to be extra brave to work really hard and march in the streets and talk to a lot of people and get people organized so that they can have their right to vote too. And that made them brave. You can do, again, the same thing today in your community. And I have a really great story I wanted to read you that's a great example of somebody being brave, okay, and making their voice heard. So that's ultimately what voting and democracy is about, making your voice heard and allowing space for other voices too. So let's listen to this book. Sophia Valdez, Future Prez. Maybe you've read it. I think it's newer. I know it's newer, but I don't know how new it is. I don't know if you know the Iggy Peck Architect series of books. I love them, and that's part of this series. This is by Andrea Beatty. Sophia was a baby who got things done, helping her family before she turned 1. She and Abuela went out every week to help elderly friends around Blue River Creek who couldn't get out and about on their own and, with no place to gather, were stuck home alone. Raking the leaves, taking pets for a walk, or just dropping by for a treat and a talk, Sophia Valdez did as much as she could for her family and friends in her whole neighborhood. A dreamer, a doer, a real-life go-getter. Most people like good, but Sophia liked better. Each morning, Abuela walked Sophia to class. They walked home again along Blue River Pass, making plans, munching cookies, Abuelo and girl, except for that Tuesday when Pup saw the squirrel. With a howl, Pup took off, racing all through the town, over, under, breath, beneath and around. Sophia scrambled to try to keep up with the hollering man and the bellowing Pup. Up the squirrel ran to the top of a hill made of leftover junk for the local landfill. They reached the tip-top of that mountain of trash, which jiggled and broke with an ear-splitting crash. Ouch, cried Abuelo. He struggled to stand. A dangerous mess, he said, grasping her hand. Down they all tumbled and hit with a thud on a moldy old pumpkin surrounded by mud. The next day, Sophia walked to school solo, but it wasn't the same without her Abuelo. This is not right, declared young Sophia, who glared at Mount Trashmore and got an idea. The very next morning at dawn, she planted a sign at the front of the lawn. She stood back and smiled, and Pup gave a bark. Get rid of Mount Trashmore, let's build a new park. Sophia's voice is starting to come out. Each of her neighbors had something to say about benches and fountains and places to play, meeting spots, gardens, a basket for bees, a rubber duck pond, and a kiosk for cheese. She drew every thought on her map of the park, which was perfectly perfect by 1/4 dark. She drifted to sleep in her soft, cozy bed. Then, bam, she woke up when a thought smacked her head. Her heart skipped a beat as she realized each one of her neighbors had said, "Let me know when it's done." They all thought Sophia could build it alone. But how could one girl do so much on her own? The weight of that thought made her tender heart ache as night thunder growled and she lay wide awake. Then dawn brought a storm and the gloomy sky wept, and the heart-sick Sophia finally slept. Abuelo baked cookies when Sophie got up. He gave her a bag full and sneaked one to Pup. He blinked back a tear as he hugged his Sophia. For courage, he whispered, "Te amo, mi vida." Sophia's knees wobbled. She felt weak inside. She looked at his ankle and quite nearly cried. Though she didn't feel brave or courageous at all, Sophia Valdez went to face City Hall. The mayor's office sent her to room 401, the Blue River Creek Department of Fun, which sent her downstairs to room 302, the office of duck ponds and cool things to do, to the office of monkeys, the Department of Cheese, the division of fountains and meetings and bees, then down to the basement so musty and cramped, where all the town's papers were sorted and stamped. And that's where the clerk said what no one else did: "You can't build a new park. You're only a kid." The word smacked Sophia deep down in her heart. Her plan was kiboshed before it could start. "I think," said Sophia, "I think that law's wrong." But her second-grade voice didn't sound very strong. The clerk said, "Clearly it cannot be done. Do you have any questions?" Sophia said, "One. If you were me and I was you and he was your grandpa, what would you do?" Well, said the clerk. Then she said nothing at all. She thought and she thought. She sent out a call to every employee through City Hall. The entire government of Blue River Creek crammed into the office to hear Sophie speak, but her words jumbled up and her cheeks turned bright red as a dozen emotions rushed into her head. Her heart beat so loudly she thought it would crack. The crowd leaned in closer. Sophia leaned back. Then her arm brushed the edge of the old cookie sack, and that was the moment when Sophia first knew being brave means doing the thing you must do, though your heart cracks with fear, though you're just in grade 2. She's worried, right? She's afraid. It's intimidating. When there's a lot of adults, it's hard. She took a deep breath, looked at the mayor in the eye, and though her knees wobbled, she held her head high. Sophia started talking. She spelled out her plan and why it all mattered and how it began. And once she got rolling, she had lots to say about meeting spots, monkeys, and places to play, and other ideas for things they could do to help the town elders and other folks too. She had thoughts on the library, thoughts on the zoo, and perhaps a way to combine the two. And all her plans. "All right," cried the mayor, "go start a petition. If the town wants a new park, we'll form a commission." And so young Sophia got right to work with some help from her family and Pup and the clerk. They were inspired by her voice and her ideas and her courage. Then others joined in, not all but a few, Miss Lila Greer and the kids in grade 2. There were hearings and surveys and taxes to figure, then bulldozers, cranes, and a blue bigger digger. They all built that park. That's how it got done, with the hard work of, by, and for everyone. But it began with the dream of one person, just one, who laced up her shoes and then led the way to help Blue River Creek get a new place to play. Now every evening till long after dark, the town comes together at Citizens Park. They all hold this truth to be self-evident that Sophia Valdez could grow up to be president. Until then, Sophia, that real-life go-getter, helps Blue River Creek get better and better. So, friends, amazing. Citizens Park, right? So, friends, she didn't need to be president to make a difference or even be voting age, right? Sophia used her voice, right? She made sure that she was using the democracy that she lives in to go to City Hall and talk to the people that adults voted for to say, we need change. And she was able to do it in her own way. Thank you so much for joining me today, Jefferson, 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. And remember, ask the adults in your life about their voting plan for this week. Talk to you soon.